Good day, everyone. My name is Samantha J. Villa Santos. Together with Clarice Isabel Fulkin and Darling Rose Rubulan, we will be your art reporters. Today, we shall discuss Thích Nhất Hạnh work on turning the wheel of Dharma. Before moving forward, let us first get to know these words that we need to be familiarized with. First, we have austere, which means life that is simple and without luxury. Next, we have cessation, so in the sense of ceasing or stopping. Next, we have Dharma, which is the ideal truth as set forth in the teachings of Buddha. Next, we have Gautama, which is the Sanskrit form of the family name of Siddhartha, the historical Buddha. Next, we have mendicant, which refers to the sense of begging. And next, we have Sangha, which is a community of those who live in harmony and awareness. So before we move further into his work, it is important that we first get to know who exactly the author is. So Thích Nhất Hạnh, which is the closest approximation to Vietnamese total pronunciation, is also known as Tay or Thai, which is Vietnamese for teacher. He was born in the year of 1926 in central Vietnam and became a novice monk at Tu Hieu Temple in Hieu City at 16. Sadly, he passed away on the 22nd of January 22 at the age of 95 in his root temple. However, his life did not go to waste. He was a global spiritual leader and peace advocate. He taught that practicing mindfulness leads to happiness in the present, fostering inner and global peace. He authored more than 100 works covering mediation, mindfulness, engaged Buddhism, poetry, children's stories, and commentaries on ancient Buddhist texts, one of which was The Old Path, White Clouds, Walking in the Footsteps of Buddha. His work, Old Path, White Clouds, was drawn directly from 24 Pali Sanskrit and was from Chinese sources, where he retold and presented the life and teachings of Gautama Buddha in his book, Old Path, White Clouds. The book traces Buddha's life slowly and gently over 80 years, partly through the eyes of Svasti, the buffalo boy, and partly through the eyes of Buddha himself. So chapter 22, entitled Turning the Wheel of Dharma, starts off with 5 mendicants, who is Asaji, Badiya, Mahanama, Godana, and Vapa, who saw Siddhartha entering the deer park after his enlightenment. The 5 friends initially agreed not to meet Siddhartha by the gate to the park, but after being impressed by his radiant bearing, they all stood up at once. The 5 mendicants did as follows. Kondana ran up to him and took his begging bowl. Mahanama fetched water so that Siddhartha could wash his hands and feet. Badiya pulled up a stool for him to sit on, and Vapa found a palm leaf and began to fan him. Asaji stood to one side, not knowing what to do, because he was initially the one who was influenced by his other friends to not take notice of Siddhartha. However, he later realized that once Siddhartha was done washing his hands and feet, he could refill the bowl and offer him cool water. The 5 friends sat in a circle around Siddhartha, who kindly looked at them and said, "My brothers, I have found a way, and I will show it to you." Then Kondama blurted out, "Gautama, you abandoned the path halfway. You ate rice, drank milk, and spent time with village children. How can you have found the path to liberation?" This is also what Badiya said at the very beginning, to which the remaining 4 agreed to not greet him should he enter the deer park. Buddha had found that Dharma not resulted from thinking, but rather experience, and he began by saying that there are 2 extremes to avoid by a person on the path, for these extremes lead to failure. One is to plunge himself into sensual pleasures, and number 2 is to practice austerities that deprive the body of its needs.
To continue with this chapter, Siddhartha stated that the path he has discovered is called the middle way, one which avoids both extremes and one that can lead to understanding, liberation, and peace. He also furthered that there are 4 truths: the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. These are what's called the 4 noble truths. The first noble truth is the existence of suffering, which we experience in birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sadness, anger, jealousy, worry, anxiety, fear, and despair are also considered suffering. He also furthered that separation from loved ones and association with those people we hate is also suffering. Desire, attachment, and clinging to the five aggregates, to which we will be elaborating and discussing further later in this chapter, are also considered suffering. Now, the second noble truth is the cause of suffering. Because of ignorance, people cannot see the truth about life and they become caught in the flames of desire, anger, jealousy, grief, worry, fear, and despair. The third one is the cessation of suffering. Understanding the truth of life brings about the cessation of every grief and sorrow and gives rise to peace and joy. Now, the fourth one is the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. Now, this is what he called the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, in Buddhism, this is the Dharma wheel with 8 spokes that represents the following: right view or right understanding, but pertains to the insight into the true nature of reality. The second one is right intention, which is the unselfish desire to realize enlightenment. Third is right speech, or using speech compassionately. Fourth is right action, which means using ethical conduct to manifest compassion. The fifth one is right livelihood, or making a living through ethical and non-harmful means. Sixth is right effort, or cultivating wholesome qualities and releasing unwholesome qualities from a person. Seventh is right mindfulness, or the whole body and mind awareness. And the last one is right concentration, or the meditation or some other dedicated concentrated practice. After this, Siddhartha told them that he had followed this Noble Eightfold Path and had realized understanding, liberation, and peace because it is the path of living in awareness. He furthered that he called this the right path because it does not avoid or deny suffering, but it allows a direct confrontation with suffering as a means to overcome it. The Noble Eightfold Path is the path of living in awareness with mindfulness as its foundation. And by practicing mindfulness, one can develop concentration that enables one person to attain understanding. Thanks to the right concentration, one can realize the right awareness, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, and effort. The understanding that develops can liberate one person from every shackle of suffering and give birth to true peace and joy. Following this explanation and revelation, Kandana felt a great light shining within his own heart. And Siddhartha revealed that it is the children of Uruvela that gave him the name Buddha, which means the awakening. And he told 5 mendicants to call him as such if they would like. Now, the Buddha stayed in Isapatana to guide his 5 friends, and following his teaching, they gave up their practice of austerities. Every day, 3 monks would go out and beg for food and would return to share the offerings they collected with the other 3. The Buddha gave them individual attention, enabling each monk to make rapid progress. He also taught them about the impermanent and non-self nature of all things, which taught them to look at the 5 aggregates as 5 constantly flowing rivers that contained nothing that could be called separate or permanent. Now, these 5 aggregates were the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Siddhartha told them that by meditating on the 5 aggregates within themselves, they came to see the intimate and wondrous connection between themselves and the universe. Now, following this story, the 5 mendicants have all realized the way, and the first to attain the awakening was Kandana, followed 2 months later by Vapa and Padilla. Shortly afterwards, Manahama and Asaji also attained arhatship. After this story took place, Buddha have realized that they can now have a real community which they can call their Sangha. The Sangha is the community of those who live in harmony and awareness, and now they have the responsibility to take the seeds of awakening and sow them in all places. It It was noted later in the story that it was actually Buddha's custom to walk in meditation each morning among the forest trees. For the last stretch of our report, we have Rose to discuss the Dharma wheel and its significance in Buddhism.
Dhamma or Dharma, it is the teaching of the Buddha, which is Siddhartha, through which he acquired the way of awakening, is represented by Dharma in chapter 22. And through this teaching, he shared with people the truth he had found, a truth that avoids both extremes and leads instead to understanding, liberation, and peace. The Dharma wheel turns because it relies on the teachings of the Buddha and aims to replace earlier teachings. It is regarded as a metaphor because the wheel of Dharma's turning symbolizes the three historical moments that characterize the growth of Buddhism in India, as well as the shifts in teaching that occur before and after enlightenment. The three turnings of the wheel of the Dharma mark three historical points in which new developments in Buddhist thought emerged in India. The turning of the wheel of the Dharma's Sutta records Buddha's very first teaching at the deer park to the first 5 disciples and is the most famous among the many discourses of the Buddha from the first turning. The language of the three turnings was found in the most famous sutra from the third turning, the Sutra Unveiling the Thought. Dharma's teaching aims to gain the enlightenment and understanding of human existence, how we function, understand rationality, and also uncover the origin of things. Considered one of the oldest symbols of Buddhism in the same way that a cross represents Christianity. Sometimes the Dharma wheel is represented in tableau supported on a lotus flower pedestal with 2 deer, a buck, and a doe on either side. The buck and doe represents male and female deer. Dharma's wheel recalls the first teaching of the Buddha, wherein it enlightens people and let them understand the discovered truth, and it was first given to 5 mendicants in Sarnath, which is Vapa, Asahi, Kondana, Mahanama, and Badiya. It is the scene where Siddhartha walks in the deer park with a radiant bearing, aura of light, and leaves us steps of a rare spiritual strength. However, a traditional Dharma wheel is a chariot wheel with varying spokes in any color, although most often it is in gold, and at the center lies 3 shapes whirling together, a yin-yang symbol, a second wheel, or an empty circle. The circle and the round shape of the wheel represents the perfection of the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching. The rim of the wheel represents meditative concentration and mindfulness, which hold practice together. The hub represents moral discipline. The 3 swirls often seen on the hub are sometimes said to represent the 3 treasures or 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. They may also represent joy. The deer on both sides are buck and doe represents male and female deer. A wheel with 8 spokes represents the eightfold path and is the most common form of the wheel in Buddhism. Right view or right understanding, insight into the true nature of reality. Right intention, the unselfish desire to realize enlightenment. Right speech, using speech compassionately. Right action, using ethical conduct to manifest compassion. Right livelihood, making a living through ethical and non-harmful means. Right effort, cultivating wholesome qualities and releasing unwholesome qualities. Right mindfulness, full body and mind awareness. Right concentration, meditation, or some other dedicated concentrated practice. When a wheel has 8 spokes, the spokes represents the eightfold path and is the most common form of the wheel in Buddhism. When a wheel has 10 spokes, the spokes represents the 10 directions in effect everywhere. When a wheel has 12 spokes, the spokes represents the 12 links of dependent origination. When a wheel has 24 spokes, the spokes represents the 12 links of dependent origination plus the reversing of the 12 links and liberation from samsara. A 24-spoke Dharma wheel is also called an Ashoka chakra. When a wheel has 31 spokes, the spokes represents the 31 realms of existence from ancient Buddhist cosmology. When a wheel has 4 spokes, which is rare, the spokes represents either the 4 noble truths of the 4 jhanas. The first noble truth is life of suffering, also called the truth of suffering, dukkha. Truth of suffering or the existence of suffering includes sickness, aging, death, agony, anger, jealousy, fear, and other negative experiences which deteriorate your morality is the existence of suffering. The second noble truth teaches that the cause of suffering is greed or demise, also called the truth of the cause of suffering, samudaya. It is the reason why you are suffering, ignoring the facts even if it's in front of you, believing in what is wrong, turning a blind eye on something you believe is not right, and it happens because you are being affected by your emotions, fear, anger, jealousy, and etc. The third noble truth is the truth of the end of suffering, nirodha. The truth of the end of the suffering or the cessation of suffering, realizing the actions made, understanding the origin of your suffering and why you experience that suffering, you will be able to identify the cause and the reason why and understand how will you cease the pain. The fourth noble truth is the truth of the path that frees us from suffering, magga. The truth of the path that frees us from suffering, you will be able to save yourself by understanding why you suffered, correcting your mistakes, and understanding the actions made.
Just some insights on the turning of the wheel of Dharma. First, it signifies how Buddha set the Buddhist law or Dharma in motion following his first sermon in Sarnath. Second is that in Buddhism, the four truths are taught to those who wish to leave samsara, or the continuous cycle of life, death, and rebirth to attain enlightenment or nirvana. For those who attain enlightenment do not get reborn upon their death. Now, the first noble truth refers to the environments and inhabitants of samsara, which can be divided further into 3 realms and 6 classes of beings. The 3 realms is called the triple world of samsara or rebirth. And in Buddhist cosmology, it adopts an ancient Aryan conception of the world having 3 strata or layers consisting of earth, atmosphere, and sky. It renames these 3 as the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. Now, the 6 classes of beings are the 6 possible forms that rebirth can take. These are from highest to lowest, gods, demigods, human, animal, hungry ghost, and hell creature. And the 5 aggregates: body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Now, the second noble truth refers to understanding the cause of suffering that translates to expelling any desires for it. It consists of 2 aspects, karma and mental afflictions. And it also consists of 4 characteristics: cause, origin, intense rising, condition. The third noble truth is being free from suffering and realizing the reality of cessation of suffering, which is nirvana. It is considered the unconditioned absolute space free from the 5 aggregates and consists of 4 characteristics: peace, cessation, perfection, and true deliverance. Lastly, the fourth noble truth is practiced by an individual who 1. knows the faults of samsara's true suffering and the advantages of liberation's true cessation, and 2. someone who wants to leave samsara behind and to reach nirvana. It consists of wisdom, faith,